It gives me great pleasure to invite the next speaker from Poland. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Ryszard Czarnecki, former European Minister of Poland.
Ms. President Rajavi, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. First of all, I congratulate my distinguished colleague from European Parliament from the same political group, my political group, European Conservatives and Reformists, Mr. Stuart Stevenson, for his efforts and such wonderful achievements to solve the اشرف crisis so far. Without these efforts, we wouldn't have reached a point that the UNHCR fulfills its commitments regarding Ashraf. Without these efforts, Baroness Catherine Ashton, Vice President of the European Commission, wouldn't have involved herself to this extent in this case, and Ashraf would not have been such an important issue in the EU. In Poland, in my country which loves freedom, like in many other EU member states, a majority of members of parliament signed a declaration in support of Ashraf. Ladies and gentlemen, despite all the efforts and achievements, we are still worried because the root of this problem lies in Tehran, which has drawn the Iraqi government to hostile acts towards Ashraf. The Iraqi government must understand that they have to choose between respecting international commitments and friendship and cooperation with Europe on one hand, or friendship with the mullahs and isolation by international community on the other hand. I wish to use this opportunity to express my strong, full support personally for Madame Rajavi and my brothers and sisters in Ashraf. Thank you.
I'm very proud to present General James Conway today. He is the 34th Commandant of the United States Marine Corps who has served in Iraq.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be a part of this distinguished panel. I'm honored to be in your presence today. I think as one of two military men on the panel, I would like to depart from the discussion thus far by the panel members that centers on the people of Camp Ashraf and talk more strategically about the objective, at least initially, of the MEK. As a word on my background to be able to do so, when I was a three-star general, I was Chief Operations Officer for all of the U.S. military. In my last job as a Commandant of the Marine Corps, I was also one of 6 advisors to both President Bush in his last years and the early years of President Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, I offer to you as a result of that, I think, what is a sobering assessment today. The greatest threat that I think we face on this planet is not global warming. It's not the global meltdown of our fiscal responsibilities. It is not a burgeoning China in the Pacific. The greatest threat that we face is a nuclear Iran. Having seen the ugly face of war, I appreciate the gravity of my statements, but I will tell you it's my belief at the pace of developments that we see today in Iran that within a short 24 months there will be a major confrontation between the United States and perhaps some of our Western allies and the nation of Iran. Unless one or both nations change its policy, I think that confrontation is absolutely inevitable. Now, our nations have not gotten along for 30 years. The agitation and the things that we have seen out there, I think, speak to that lack of coherence, going all the way back to the hostages of the Carter and Reagan years, but certainly through the terrorist attacks that have been talked about by Madame Rajvi, the miscalculations that both nations experienced during the tanker war, Iran's involvement in both Iraq and in Afghanistan. In June, based upon quality weapons coming into Iraq, the United States lost, we think, 13 soldiers to those weapon systems. Economically, we have been spatting with each other. We place sanctions on them. Iran desires within the OPEC to keep the cost of oil unnaturally high in order to be able to effect our recovery. And of course, most recently it has been talked about the terrorist plot to kill the Saudi ambassador on United States soil and the collateral damage that could occur in that restaurant, numbering in the tens and perhaps the hundreds of Americans. All of that, ladies and gentlemen, is on a hair trigger. No Western warship goes through the Straits of Hormuz unless they are at general quarters, ready for conflict. And in fact, last month, a British warship fired warning shots against Iranian boats when they approached too closely. But none of that compares to what is most disturbing, and that is, again, Iranian development of nuclear weapons. This development has been taking place now over 2 decades. The country has shrouded it or masked it, if you will, under the idea of nuclear energy. I'm sorry, the concept is almost laughable. Iran has more natural reserves of oil than virtually any nation on the face of the globe. It is cheap, it is efficient, and it is plentiful. So the idea that Iran would need nuclear power plants with the cost and the maintenance simply does not pass muster. The IAEA, although for years attempted to, I think, mitigate the impact of that development, now has said with the outgoing president that yes, he now firmly believes that Iran is in pursuit of nuclear weapons capability. United States policy, as stated by our president when he was candidate Obama, is that Iranian possession of nuclear weapons is, quote, unacceptable. Now, you ask yourself, why is that? There are over 30 nations on the globe today who have a nuclear capability. Not all have nuclear weapons, but those nations have nuclear power plants. Why shouldn't Iran be able to? Ladies and gentlemen, not one of those other 30 nations espouse the use of terrorism to accomplish national objectives. And any nation that has been attacked by terrorism, probably all nations, I would be so bold to say, are scared, incredibly scared of the idea of a state that supports terrorism in possession of nuclear weapons. But why war? Is war the only answer? Well, not necessarily, but we have tried engagement. We have tried quiet diplomacy. We've tried proxy diplomacy. We've tried sanctions. There's even been sabotage of the Iranian nuclear development. And I can't tell you today who that was, but all of that has simply delayed, not stopped, this progressive development as it continues.